talk to us about the recently formed Mayo Clinic Values Council.
You're okay, Al. You're okay.
Sister is the coordinator of the council, which was formerly the St. Mary's Hospital Sponsorship Board. The council's primary mission is to promote the Mayo Clinic values throughout the organization and to perpetuate the Franciscan legacy on the St. Mary's campus. Their activities include fostering partnerships with related programs, offices, and activities across Mayo Clinic. So this is clearly bridge building, which is part of our theme for the fall. I've had the privilege of knowing Sister, consider her a friend. Over the years, I've been a member of the sponsorship board, and Sister and her fellow sisters, it doesn't sound right, does it? Fellow sisters? How about her sister sisters? Sister and her sister sisters have been very kind to me and treated me with respect, to the point that I wondered sometimes if Martin Luther really got it right. Oops. Joke. Sister also is an educator. Most of her life she spent in education, 31 years in Bogota, Colombia, where she helped teach and was rector of a school. And since she's been back in Rochester, she's continued to be a leader in the religious community and president of the Franciscans. Let me introduce Sister Tierney.
I just need to get connected.
Just a second, I'm connected. Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I love this kind of an invitation because I think what you're going to see and may not be so aware of. I've only been in this job 2 years. As Bob said, I was previously 6 years in leadership, and before that I was 31 years out of the country. But the clear sense of how Rochester has been built as a city from its very early days in relationships and partnerships. I think that's an amazing element of who we are, and I'm personally grateful for that. I also want to just tell you, this is the second time I've been in your church. And the first time, I must have read about an article, something about that beautiful crucifix that you have up in your entryway. Gagnon is the sculptor. And I came down one day just to see that, and I stood in front of it, and I believe, honestly, I think it's the most beautiful crucifix in the city of Rochester. And there are some very special ones. I came in today and just stood there. There's something about that speaks very much to my own Christian profession of faith, if you will. So, I'm going to own my biases. You'll probably see them or capture them very quickly. I am a Franciscan, and I'm very grateful for that. I also, I have a passion about the transition that Bob referenced from what was the St. Mary's Sponsorship Board and the responsibility of that into the new Mayo Clinic Values Council. It's about values. It's about who we are and our identity. And I'm really quite passionate about that. So I just own that. And like I say, I think you'll capture that as I walk through some of this. I'm a science. I'm biology, chemistry. But my appreciation for history, I'm so conscious of where I stand today is where I came from. Those roots, those tap roots of my life, my family, my church, my own religious congregation, my educational experiences. And I think that's so important. One of the values we identify at Mayo, and I think we're missing a clause, is to steward not just our planet, our ecological gift, our colleagues, our families, those people of our lives, but also I think our history, because our history is part of our legacy. So those are kind of my biases that I present at the beginning. I will happily walk through this. I would welcome a question. We'll have some time at the end, but if anybody wants to interject a question or a comment, I'm fine with that. So just please be free about that, okay? I'm not your most techie person, but I think I can manage this. Okay, as Dr. Morris pointed out, Dr. Brown is the Mayo Clinic Values Council is really the successor, if you will, of what was the St. Mary's Hospital sponsorship. And Dr. Brown is that physician chair. I am the coordinator, our host in the Mayo structure. We are part of the program in professionalism and ethics. Linda Maddie is the administrator for that. So our little kind of executive team are the two of us and Linda Maddie, and she's my direct supervisor, just to give you a structure piece, okay? All right, I call this history to life because I believe out of our history, we make life. We bring it to life out of who we are and how we are. Okay, Mother Alfred and Dr. William Worrell Mayo. Let's go back to 1883, and I especially invite the women to try and stand still and picture yourself as a woman in 1883. It was in August, actually, August 21st, in which that tornado came through Rochester and destroyed much of what was the town. And at that time, Dr. Mayo, who had really, the clinic is celebrating 150 years, and that's from the time Dr. Mayo really put his footprint in the city. St. Mary's Hospital is celebrating its 125th anniversary. So there was a little gap between the time when these two became team members, if you will. My other bias or prejudice, I claim that anyone who wears this badge, the Mayo badge, part of our taproot identity lies in the relationship between these two people. I stand still, and I think that I can't imagine, they were light years beyond their colleagues at that time back in 1883. And if you are at all familiar with some of the values of Mayo Clinic, the principal one, primary one, is that the needs of that patient do come first. And we identify 8 other values that sustain how we care for the needs of that patient. And respect, integrity, healing, compassion, innovation, stewardship, excellence. I believe the linchpin for all of those is the value of teamwork. How do I show compassion? How do I show integrity? How do I work through and innovate in innovative kind of ways? It's usually in connection with other members of my team. So that's a real strong prejudice for me. And we identify that in Mayo. We identify the descriptors of those values are far more than an identification. Teamwork, we say, whoops, just a minute here, that's my page. Value the contributions of all, starting with that doorman, the face of Mayo for many patients who come through, all the way up to Dr. Noseworthy. Valuing the contributions of all, blending the skills of individual members in unsurpassed collaboration. I think of St. Paul. I mean, the adjectives and adverbs that Paul uses are always at the top. I think unsurpassed collaboration. That's the essence of real teamwork. And I believe that these two people set that goal, that model for us. Prejudice. When I had my orientation 2 years ago in July, I don't remember the man's name, but I remember the statement that the man from finance said to us: if you want to succeed at Mayo, work to assure that your colleagues succeed. I thought, that way beyond Mayo, isn't that an incredible philosophy about a professional relationship with anyone that you work with? I thought that was pretty significant. Okay, as you know, in 1883, in August 21st, this tornado came through and destroyed much of what was Rochester. And it was just a few days later that when Mother Alfred, Dr. W.W. Mayo, asked our Mother Alfred to help care for the injured and the wounded, because some of the women, the wives, were already caring for members of their family. And we took some in the convent. They were down in a dance hall and in a saloon, any place that bodies could be attended. And it was very few days after that she says, we need a hospital. First sense of a community need that emerged out of a disaster, if you will, and look today where that came. And she went to him, and she was waiting for him one morning in his office before he came in. And she was there with one purpose: we need a hospital. We'll build it and you staff it. And if you want to see another part of, possibly for your educational forum, that wonderful DVD that captured, it's one of the Heritage series, leap of faith. That conversation between Dr. W. Mayo and Mother Alfred is rich in the integrity of those two people in their faith lives and in their professional lives. I think it's extraordinary. And much of that is text straight out of their biographies. Anyway, she goes to tell him that. Now, one of the other things that I think is important about that relationship, his incredible respect for her as a woman, back in 1883, when women, the place of women in family and society was extremely different from what it is today. And she does convince him, and she convinces him, this town needs a hospital, and the dialogue, they go back and forth, is fascinating. And he insists, no it doesn't, no it doesn't. And one of her lines was, well, I needed it the day of the tornado, and he said, well, that was an act of God, that's not going to happen too soon in the future. No, it's a rich conversation. And she finally says to him, you have the vision, your sons have the energy, they were both completing their medical studies, Charlie and Will. I have the experience. She'd already built like 16 or 17 schools. God has seldom been so obvious in his direction. And one of her questions to him, or his questions to her was, who's going to build it? And she said, we will, the Sisters of St. Francis. And he says, that's preposterous. You've never built a hospital. She said, well, I never built a skilled one until I had to. And so that the sense of their ability to risk, there's incredible value. That's part of who we are, I think, as Rochester citizens. I'm going to share a couple texts out of this book, the Mayo Brothers, and notice the word heritage. Oh, I said I'd stay put. Okay. This is from Son Will. Medicine must no longer be practiced individually, but by groups of men, each one bringing the results of his work and studies to bear upon the case. In no other way can the patient receive the benefits to which he's entitled. How this cooperation can be satisfactorily brought about is our present problem. That comes a little tiny bit later, but I bring it in because the team, that sense of teamwork, was so embedded in on our very beginnings. There they are. And this, if you notice down here, this is the part of the visual design of the new Mayo Clinic Values Council. And that really, well, first of all, if you go into any Mayo website, most of them are two colors. That's got all the colors, the rainbow. And the large one in the middle there is the Mayo primary need, or the needs of the patient come first, primary value. But that's a double helix. I don't think the design person was aware of that, but that which is our DNA, who we are. Again, back to that teamwork and our rootedness in those two people. St. Mary's Hospital opened in 1889, just for helpful information. Now, again, the Mayo Partnership, still in the 1800s, the fascination to me, in 1892, before the turn of the century, remember that St. Mary's opened in 89, Dr. Mayo had already invited Dr. Stinchfield to become a partner, and in 1894, Dr. Christopher Graham, and then they continue. 1898 was Dr. Millett, I don't know if it's Millett or Millet, however he says that. But the incredible awareness that working together is going to provide that much greater care for the patient at a time when most physicians were simply autonomous in their practice. And I think that, again, is that not part of who we're called to be as a city, as citizens of this city? A few more quotes. Also from William. So tremendous has been, this is early turn of the century. So tremendous has been the recent advance of medicine that no one person can understand more than a small fraction of it. Thus, physicians have become more or less dependent on the skill, ability, and specialized training of other physicians for sufficient knowledge to care for the patient intelligently. This is Charlie. Doctors who work alone, as most do, are unfortunately individualists. Few of them develop that respect for the other fellow's opinion, which teamwork and group medicine engender. And if you read the Rochester Post-Bulletin, just within the last couple weeks, there's a series on the 150 years, and one of the statements where they're listing 150 important contributions to medicine, developed and implemented the concept of integrated multi-specialty group practice of medicine. This is Mayo's most enduring and significant contribution to medicine. It's the first one. And I think that spills over. I look at the group of 5 women who are the administrative assistants to the assistant administrators at St. Mary. It's the the whole Mayo complex. It just blows my mind how well they work together. How that's part of their DNA. They're there for one another. And you see the people, the couriers, the door people. Just stop and stand still and watch any group across that whole complex. And this is certainly part of who we are. And I think a wonderful challenge at the time in our world that does tend to, that self-made man, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps, etc., etc. So there's where, even before the turn of the century. Then we come to nursing. Now at the time that tornado went through, the only professionally educated nurse in Rochester was Edith Graham, who became the wife of Charlie. And Dr. Mayo, in his own intelligence, invited her to please teach the sisters. Mother Alfred, and I think there were 12 of our sisters, were all teachers and didn't know anything about nursing, so she did. And he said collaboration and teamwork would be essential if the hospital was to run smoothly. Now there's a very interesting chapter in that, okay? This is Edith. Welcome. Sister Joseph, and I'll come back to Mother Alfred, was the administrator of that hospital for just a couple of years and personally chose Sister Joseph and trained her. And Dr. W.W. Mayo became a consultant kind of from the beginning and turned over to Charlie and Will the responsibility of being the major physicians. These 3, Sister Joseph and Charlie and Will, all died in 1939. She in March and they in the summer months. I find that just fascinating. But anyway, along about, we go into the late 1890s and turn the century and come early first years. A lot of people were coming to Rochester to receive treatment from Dr. Will and Charlie. A lot of family people came with them, accompanying them. Other physicians came to learn from them. I mean, the awareness of others of the incredible ability of these 2 doctors. So we had a lot of people coming to Rochester, and there's 2 pieces of that. But the first one was, Sister Joseph says, we need a nursing school. And Dr. Will and Charlie, she was Will's surgical assistant, right hand. And they said, no. Nobody could do the job as well as the Franciscan sisters, even if they trained them. She said, we're going to begin a nursing school. We need a nursing school. I find that fascinating. Father, W.W., was absolutely convinced we didn't need a hospital. Mother Alfred said, yes, we do. And she said, we'll build it, you staff it. That happened. Mr. Joseph says, we need a nursing school. Will and Charlie say, no, we don't. She said, we do, and she began it. And see, the importance of women, too, I think we have a role. We have a complementary role. I think that's awfully important. So the nursing school at St. Mary's began in 1906. Whoop, did I get one ahead here? Or did we miss one? Well, anyway, shortly thereafter, in 1912, we had the Kaler Hospital of Nursing, which became the Rochester Methodist Hospital School of Nursing. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Oh, there we are. Now, at the same time, this is another need of the community. As I was saying, at the turn of the century, we had all these people coming. You needed hotels or board and room type of places for family. We needed more hospital beds, and they didn't want to bring medical out to St. Mary's, which was a mile down a dirt road. That's in the biographies. But you didn't want to contaminate surgical patients with medical, so Kaler went to Europe, or was in Europe, and discovered this hotel-hospital concept. And if you go back, our city is rich with all these different places that were like bed, breakfast, hospital sites that ultimately became the Rochester Methodist Hospital, which began in 1954. So I think, again, a need of the city to provide the kind of hospital space and hotel and care for the many visitors that came gave rise to the second hospital in this city, and Kaler Hotel and all of the different hotel that we do have. So now we come to 1986. And I'm going to quote from you a few lines out of the Rochester Post Bulletin from March 3rd, 1986. And I think you'll think this is almost Dr. Noseworthy yesterday. This was the rollout article for the integration, whereby St. Mary's Methodist Hospital and Mayo became integrated. They always, in one sense, have been integrated in how they work together, unique across the United States, if you will. But this became integration of assets, management, governance. Here is part of the text. I have the whole thing laminated if anybody wants to read it. And these are the pieces. Clinic, hospitals take historic step in merger. The agreement to merge represents a phenomenal administrative achievement. Operators of the two hospitals deserve great credit for seeing the advantages of a combined medical institution instead of pursuing their individual goals. The merger is a reflection of the enormous changes which are shaking and shaping the healthcare field. March 3rd, 1986. The institutions are being joined together not so much to combat a specific problem as to prepare for unknown demands that may be made on them in the future. The future of healthcare belongs to large corporations providing a variety of medical and hospital services. As a combined institution, Mayo will be better equipped to hold its own in what has become a fiercely competitive marketplace. In short, the clinic has always been in the forefront of medical care developments. Now it's matching that record with equally innovative steps in marketing, management, and administration. Each institution will remain a separate legal entity and will retain its own character and culture. And Michael Myers, who was the administrator at the time of St. Mary's, described it as an event unparalleled in historical significance. I think the piece about each institution retaining its own character and culture, that's a richness, and we're going to come back to naming that I think holds that. This move will give Mayo a stronger marketing posture in competing for patient dollars with the mega corporations now beginning to dominate the nation's healthcare industry. Dr. Mayberry, the merger will help us to respond to the evolution in the nation's healthcare system. This stunning revolution is virtually unstoppable, and he predicted it would happen by 1995. Mayo, historically a conservative institution, was among the first medical complexes to sniff the winds of change in the healthcare industry. See, I think that's his vision. I think that continues to build on the vision that not only is Mayo, but I think the city of Rochester. I think there's a lot of pieces that are part of that. So there they are. Then we come to 2013. I came on this job, I completed my term in leadership on June 30th. On July 1st, which was a Sunday, we installed the new team. And on July 2nd, I began this job. A couple pieces about that. At that time, the sponsorship board existed and our responsibility. At the time of that integration, Mayo Clinic leadership asked the Franciscans to create the sponsorship board with a twofold responsibility: promote the Mayo Franciscan values and maintain the Catholic identity of St. Mary's Hospital. In my 6 years of leadership from 26 to 2012, I was a member of the sponsorship board. That's when I got to know Dr. Morris, who on that first day, if you know Dr. Morris, on the first day of introductions, everybody goes around and introduces, right? And he looks and he says, by the end of this meeting, I'll know you all of you very well. That did not intimidate me. I don't know if it intimidated anybody else, but it sure didn't intimidate me. Enjoyed a wonderful friendship and certainly got to know Nancy too. I appreciate that. And Kelly, their daughter. But anyway, in those 6 years, about 2 years into my office term, about 2008, John Oviatt, a lawyer for the clinic, came back to the sponsorship board. If you Googled Mayo Clinic at that time, Mayo had no hospital. So they were losing the opportunity for significant monies in research because they didn't have a hospital. So the request was, could we say Mayo Clinic and then dash St. Mary's Hospital dash Rochester Methodist Hospital. Our board didn't have any trouble with that. I don't believe Methodist did. That was fine. And then a few years later, what had been always kind of named as the Mayo Franciscan values, Franciscan was taken out of that. I, as the president of our congregation, did a knee-jerk on that, to be perfectly honest. And it had already gone through the Board of Trustees, so it was like, you don't exactly go back and say, wait a minute here. The point was, Mayo as an enterprise, as a whole institution, needed one set of established values operative through the whole system. That's very logical. So Sister Jean, who was the president of the sponsorship board at that time, myself, and Sister Mary Elliott, who had my position, met with one of the men from the Board of Governors. And what you find today, I think, again, preserving history and our legacy, we name Mayo Clinic Values, and there's a parenthesis right below it. These are the values of our founders, the Mayo brothers and the Franciscan sisters. That's, to me, is the important. We don't lose that link because I think it's part of who we are. And that's fine. We can live with that. Now we come to, so I'm in the role of the sponsorship board, and I'm enjoying that, to be perfectly honest. And then suddenly, there's a very serious problem that didn't just emerge overnight. But Mayo Clinic was having very great difficulty in terms of how it was being reflected back by agents or entities that evaluate. We were like St. Mary's, looked fine in cardiology, but not Methodist, because cardiology is over at St. Mary's. When you think of how it worked out, Methodist had all of the orthopedic unless it was trauma. They had kidney, a lot of other things. St. Mary's had the ICUs, cardiac, the emergency room, all OBGYN was down at Methodist. A carefully, intentionally designed structure for distribution to give the best quality services at the best price, if you will. And that my pain is that outside agents can't see that, the value of that kind of operation that was operating very well. But we had to come to, there really was no option, a one licensed hospital. Because like St. Mary's doesn't have any OBGYN, Methodist doesn't have any ER, and the license of the hospital was being threatened. Well, I would have been losing the forest for the trees. So we became a one licensed hospital as of January 1st of this year. So sponsorship ended as of December 31st, 2013. Again, Mayo leadership asked us, we worked, we being a couple people from Mayo and from the sponsorship board, and developed what has really become a successor entity, and that is the Mayo Clinic Values Council. My next slide, there we go. Pardon me. I like this slide, this table, if you will, because I think it's a beautiful description of the legacy of a relationship. As a Franciscan, one of the key words with Francis was relationship, his profound relationship with God. He called everybody brother and sister. He felt in relationship in some kind of way, and with all of nature. Brother horse, sister bird, etc. And here again, you track, sort of that's the Franciscan side over there, here's the Mayo side, if you will. As I mentioned, Mother Alfred and WW, from 83 to 89, were a little bit into the early 90s, but Sister Joseph and the Charlie and Will, from 89 to 39, the greater share of the history of our institutions. And then the sisters and the staff, we owned and operated St. Mary's Hospital. Most of the supervisors were our sister nurses. At one time, we had 123 sisters living in that convent. And from the very beginning, you have the integrated group practice. In 1986, the sponsorship board was formed. We were accountable to the Rochester Executive Operation Team, because that was primarily St. Mary's, flowed over into Rochester because people floated, people went from one place to the other, so it wasn't just limited to St. Mary's. And then, with the ending of sponsorship board and the one licensed hospital, and if you read the signs, it'll say Mayo Clinic Hospital, Rochester, and below it dash St. Mary's Campus, preserving the history and the legacy dash Methodist Hospital. Some people wanted to name it the Downtown Hospital. I said, no, it has a history. There's been a contribution here by that Methodist Foundation. So it'll be maintained. Now today, that council, which began effective in January 1st of 2014, we are enterprise-wide. That's Florida's and Jacksonville, Florida, and Scottsdale, Arizona, plus all the Mayo Health system around the Midwest. And we are directly accountable to the Board of Governors. So much of what was sponsorship just lifted over into the Mayo Clinic Values Council. For example, sponsorship had 3 committees: education, research, patient care. They reflect the 3 shields of Mayo. Dr. Morris serves on the Values Review Council, trying to maintain that high quality of patient care. Another activity, if you will, of the sponsorship board, which has become now part of the Mayo Clinic Values Council, we have a CARIS Award. And CARIS comes from that beautiful word, Greek word of caring. And it's an award given to persons. I again reference this badge and I say any one of us that wears this, the bar is high, absolutely high. But there are people, and I have stories that go way above and beyond what it means to be compassionate, to be a healer, to be respectful. And that award will continue under the auspices of the Mayo Clinic Values Council. We have a pilgrim program, begun in 1997. Dr. Morris and his daughter Kelly were a part of that last fall. And the idea was we send 10 people at an endowment fund that was created by my congregation to Assisi in Italy for a pilgrimage every year to really become even more imbued in what does it mean to be Franciscan? What's that Franciscan philosophy of life, spirituality of life? And with the idea you come back and hopefully become that kind of leaven in the institution. So those programs continue. And the second part of the mission of the Mayo Clinic Values Council, as Bob said at the beginning, is to maintain the Mayo Clinic values across the whole enterprise and assist to perpetuate the Franciscan legacy at St. Mary's, so that part of who we are in our history and legacy will continue. Okay. That's the again, that's the visual design, and it's so alive, and we hope to maintain it as a very alive, if you will, not a web page that brings life, that supports life, that challenges life in a variety of kinds of ways. There are our values, and if you notice, respect, integrity, compassion, healing, rich, teamwork, innovation, excellent stewardship, ties, rich ties. That came from a nursing division, and I think that's a wonderful way to remember what our values are, a mnemonic for it. Dr. McCarthy, John McCarthy, if you know him, he said, you know, it can also spell rich sight. S-I-T-E, and that's true. Our values mean, my first month in this job, Lynn Frederick was my supervisor, and she arranged, I spent most of July in interviews with people all over the place. It was very helpful, and if there was one message that kept coming through over and over, pardon me, it was, we can't lose our values. We can't lose our values. And obviously at that time, a lot of people felt that sponsorship was a strong anchor for helping us hold those. And now that's the task of the Values Council. Again, this, Dr. Brown always points out, this is a quote from a speech that Dr. William Mayo gave at Rush University in 1910. The best interest of the patient is the only interest to be considered, and in order that the sick may benefit from advancing knowledge, a union of forces is necessary. And out of that, that's where we find that primary value, the needs of the patient come first. And that force, union of forces, that teamwork is necessary. Not important, not helpful, but necessary. There are values. I think at this point I could go through some of those specifics of like the different committees, but I think I've done that. What I'd rather do, if you're okay with this, I'm going to share a few stories. Okay? I'm going to also, do we have any nurses in the group? Good. Okay. I want to just go back a minute. I was watching time a little bit. This is this wonderful, the Nurses of Mayo Clinic. Did you receive a copy of that or no? Okay. This was a book published about the role of nurses in the 150 years of Mayo. And I just think there's a couple things that I think are more than worthwhile to help us remember regarding nursing. Okay. Referring to Dr. W.W. Mayo's willingness to build the hospital, finally won over by Mother Alfred's conviction and no doubt inspired by her faith. Again, his openness to a woman in 1883, I think that's so significant. Dr. Mayo agreed to the plan, and that was the Franciscans would build the hospital, the Mayos would staff it. For it to be realized, Mother Alfred's goal of building a hospital in the up-and-coming city would take determination, planning, and hard work. It would also take money. For the next 6 years, the Franciscan sisters sacrificed and saved to raise funds. In the meantime, Mother Alfred worked closely with Dr. Mayo to choose the location of the hospital. It was 9 acres just west of downtown, so that's where it is. Purchase the land and hire a builder. In turn, Dr. W. Mayo, accompanied by his son Will, toured hospitals in the East to get the latest ideas about design and construction, meticulously planning a state-of-the-art facility. And in their own ways, Dr. W. Mayo, Will, Charlie, and Edith Graham were preparing to begin their historic collaboration with the Sisters of St. Francis, part of our identity as citizens in this city. Among the many outcomes of this dynamic partnership would be an internationally recognized model of excellence in nursing, not just medicine, in nursing. Much as Edith Graham's skills were needed, the Franciscan sisters would be essential to the hospital's success. After only a few weeks of instruction, the sisters assumed the majority of the hospital nursing duties with a schedule that was rigorous. If a special nurse were needed at night, a sister stayed up and remained on duty until the next night. 2 days and the night in between was not an unusual period on duty. And lay women who followed and were part of that rigorous schedule and that kind of care for the patients. Starting in the early 1900s, 2 major factors contributed to the unique identity of the Rochester nurses. And this is part of our city's history. One was the distinctive setting in which they worked, and the second was the opportunities to learn that were inherent in it. Rochester nurses had the advantage of using state-of-the-art medicines and equipment almost as soon as each was available. At the turn of the century, these included drugs such as aspirin and digitalis, x-ray machines, electric cardiographs, and suction apparatus. By the mid-20s, special shipments of insulin, a newly discovered treatment for diabetes mellitus, came to Mayo Clinic from Toronto, and oxygen chambers were installed for use with patients. In addition to having access to state-of-the-art medical treatments, nurses benefited from working, learning, and researching with the medical staff. A very unique background for nursing education in this country. The Mayo brothers, along with the physicians and scientists who joined them, valued education in every aspect education in every aspect of patient care, from the operating room to the wards. As a School of Nursing instructor, Elise Crew recalled Dr. Will and Dr. Charlie were very real personalities for us all. In many ways, the nurses' learning opportunities had a positive effect on staff recruitment and retention, and they had more opportunities to learn at St. Mary's than anywhere else. Part of our history, part of the importance of education. Okay, so I'm going to share a few stories out of the Caris Awards. Anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. Now this is just in 2 years of my being in this role. So if I go back into the records, there will be a lot more. Okay. Oops, that one got upside down just a moment ago. Take. I'm going to begin with I'm going to begin with a nurse, and then I'll go to a doctor. His name is Peter. He's the one who makes the team successful and accomplished. Again, that importance of working together as a team. He brings out the best in each of us. He's the one you want to work for. He compliments all that work with him. He knows that a team effort is necessary for the best outcomes on the unit, and is very appreciative for the help he receives. He accepts you as you are and does not judge you based on a difference in character or culture. I have witnessed him caring for non-English speaking patients and doing so with kindness, professionalism, and empathy. Through the day, you see he earns their trust, and he's recognized for his infectious leadership. This is a doctor. He's one of the few anesthesia consultants who, on his own initiative, gives breaks to the CRNAs and anesthesia residents. It was a very busy day in cardiovascular because we had received many emergencies that day, and we were understaffed due to employees with the flu. This particular day, the in-room provider was on call and needed to be relieved. She was doing one of our most complicated cases. Without hesitation, Doctor relieved her doing the case for another 4 hours. In my 35 years here, this is one of the most selfless acts I have witnessed. He did this with not only with care for his patient and for the CR, but for the CRN, who needed a couple hours off to prepare for a busy night ahead. This is definitely meeting the physical and emotional needs of colleagues. In turn, this positively affects patient care. He takes the initiative to do some of the menial tasks, like emptying the urine container, clean the monitoring cables as they are removed from a patient, suction the patient, set up transport, ventilator. His actions go beyond just being helpful. His actions contribute to our team goals of efficient OR turnover and reduced turnover times. And I'm going to share, I don't need to read them. One of my favorites, a young lady down, she's a nurse in Uganda, outpatient. She had a patient who came in, and had some kind of treatment that required some anesthetic. And she had to assure that there was someone there to take care of him, take him home. And oh yeah, he had a friend who was coming. Oh yeah. Well, they go through the procedure, and after, he has no name, no telephone number, and then he says to her, oh no, I met this guy at the bar last night, and I gave him $20, and he said he'd come. Okay, well, she figured that probably was a ghost, and worked with social services, and got that man home safely with an escort. Another one of the most touching, we had a woman was brought in early 20s. She was 7 months pregnant, and she was discovered with grade 4 stomach cancer. So the baby was delivered by cesarean, and she began an immediate treatment of chemo trying to save her life. A nurse up there learned this woman was a classic pianist, and her greatest concern was that her son would never know her music. That nurse got a piano brought up to, this is an IC unit, got the piano brought up to the IC unit, gets the media folk over, and began developing a film, a DVD. You see the woman, so that her son would not only hear her music, but see her playing that piano. There she is in her hospital gown and all the bags and bottles and everything that she was connected with. And then very shortly after that, that same nurse learned besides a classic pianist, she was a classic organist. Got her, God alone knows how, up those winding steps into the gallery at St. Mary's, got that film crew back, and completed the DVD with this woman playing the organ. So for her, imagine for the husband and for that son, that will have an absolutely indescribable memory of his mother for the rest of his life. And another favorite, we had a patient was brought in on the IC unit. The doctor describing this said he was terminal. The bowel had been dead for 2 weeks was the description of the physician. And they won a few battles, lost a few battles, and the family moved to withdrawal. There was no way, he was terminal. So while they were waiting for a son to come from some distance, the nurse learns this man had a dog that was a very special companion to him. So she arranges for the family, somebody in the family, to bring the dog in. You know what I love about this? It wasn't, who do I have to call? Who do I have to get permission from? She had some family member bring that dog. This man had been fully unconscious for at least 48 hours. When that dog came next to the bed, he began licking the hand of that man. The man began petting the dog. She encouraged one of the family members to help her shift him over onto the side of the bed. The dog jumped right in bed with that man, and he died embracing what had been a very faithful companion to him in life. And think of what that would mean for the family as they said goodbye to their father. I mean, these are Mayo at its best. I could go on, and Bob knows some of this. It's just amazing, the quality. And Mayo empowers its people. When I think of what is teamwork involved, the people who are the general services, the first face of Mayo is the doorman when you come in, and one of the last is the parking attendant. And that group of people, the parking attendant, somebody is end of day, they're going through to get their car out, tears are running down their face, scrambling for their money to pay their ticket. Parking attendant says, no, you just go on, you have good evening, it's taken care of. They don't have to call the supervisor and say, I've got this kid. They empower. Isn't that a part of teamwork? Calling out the very best of each one of us in our families, in our profession, anywhere. So I think that's an extraordinarily strong value in life, not just in our profession. So I don't know if we have any questions, but in a nutshell.
Yes, we do.
Okay, you have questions. Good. I'll do my best. And I'll tell my other story.
Delightful. I think you may not know it, but you've got a better history of the Mayo Clinic here in about 20 minutes than you'll get anywhere else. We'll have some questions in a minute.
My closing story, my friend
Yeah.
Warwick.
Yeah, we'll get you a little later for Warwick. I had the opportunity, as Tierney said, to join her and the group on a pilgrimage last year where they go to Assisi in Italy and study in the footsteps of St. Francis. As the old man in the crew, traveling with my daughter Kelly and this ball of fire, this is supposed to be life-changing. It was life-threatening for me. Oh, it was a great trip. Questions, please. Anybody?
Or comments if you have
Or
anything.
comments? Yes.
Thank you so much, sister. It's great to have you with us this morning. I need to endorse just a little story. I'm a retired chaplain from St. Mary's.
Oh, okay.
And we had a patient from New York City area that was preparing for surgery, and I visited them pre-op. And he didn't make it through surgery. And the family, of course, were very stressed. And in my being called to be with the family, I mentioned, the difficulty of being so far away from home. And they said, no chaplain. When we walked in the door to St. Mary's and spoke to the woman at the information desk, we knew this was a good place. And we're glad we were so far from home. We felt so comfortable here. And that just warmed my heart. And so you mentioned, the teamwork. Even the woman at the information desk served these people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Other comments? Anybody? Yes. Pat?
The last few years I worked in utilization review, and that's when they joined together financially, the two hospitals and the clinic. And one of the reasons was the government could not figure out how 3 institutions could get along with this billing system. They had never seen anything like that. But there were no problems, in the past. They couldn't get over that. That we didn't fight about, this was the Methodist money, this was the clinics, this was St. Mary's. It was all.
Yeah, that's when I said that's my pain, that
Yeah.
somebody couldn't stand still and look at this and say, this is really a rather incredible complex
Yeah.
that is working very well.
Good. Anyone else? Young lady up in front?
Well, as I recall, the original Dr. Mayo, who was so supportive of Mother Moles, Sister Moles, he had very good training at home because his wife often would substitute when he was out on a call. She would take care of the patients that came in. And for heaven's sake, she was a milliner. She made hats.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure the quality of care for that patient, but the essence of teamwork was right there at the very beginning with the founder.
William's son made that affirmation strong, and Mother herself was a good doctor and went on in detail. That's in that nursing book too, about how she cared at a high level. Well, he was always teaching his kids, so his wife was right there. I mean, they really were educated together, if you will. But that he recognized, again, that beautiful respect for woman and her ability.
Anything else? Les, you usually have comments.
Just great to hear the story.
Okay. And Dwayne, you usually have comments.
Thank you. That was a very helpful gathering together the story of Mayo and the sisters. Can you comment briefly about the future of the sisters in the community and?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, first of all, on that Mayo Clinic Values Council, according to the charter, 2 of the members are our sisters, named by the Congregational Administration. Sister Marilyn, who's our current president, is one of those people, and Sister Jean, who was the outgoing sponsorship board president. She's a nurse by profession. So that's part of the composition of the Mayo Clinic. And then in my position, but I happen to be a sister, it could be a lay person in this position. Well, our community certainly is changing. We are not receiving women as we did in the past. And part of that was, up until when, if you wanted to, as a religion, if you wanted to be, if you didn't, marriage wasn't part of your future, if you wanted to do something in education, healthcare, you almost, on a Catholic basis, you became a sister, because our ministries were primarily in education, healthcare, social work, caring for orphans, etc. And with Vatican II in our church, that was certainly a breakthrough in many ways. You no longer needed to be a religious to be a theology teacher in a university or whatever. So that shifted very much in terms of why women came to our community. We're experiencing what most communities across the country are, where we went out into other fields. We're not receiving women like we were. And where that's going to take us, we're not too anxious about that. We believe God is part of this. Same thing with St. Mary's. We had 123 sisters at one point that lived in that hospital convent, and as I mentioned, most of them were nurse supervisors. There are 16 who live there today. Most of them, they're all retired, except Sister Jen Rose and Sister Lauren and Sister Bernadette. Sister Jen Rose and Lauren are part-time. Bernadette's a full-time dietitian. The others are retired. Many of them are volunteers. But that's coming to there won't always be. I don't think we'll maintain that convent into the future. Please don't tell Sister Jen Rose that. But, I mean, realistically, I don't know where. But that's where we are. And we have, we're very active. And, for example, in this city, the whole thing about trafficking, women and children, we're very active. We've moved out into a lot of social ministry in real ways. So.
It's a beautiful story about the young girls that are given a chance to meet the sisters and get some training.
Yes. Yeah. No, Marlis does great programs up there. And I'll tell you a story you'd like this. My office is just before, if you're going down west, my office is just before Sister General's, and I'm going out of my office down to the secretary's one day, and this couple was there coming along, and they had a girl maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, and ground to a halt in front of Sister General's office, whipped that kid around and said, "There's a real nun." Fell over backwards, right?
Tell people who Sister Jen Rose is, some may not know.
I'm sorry. She is the last sister administrator of St. Mary's. I can't remember quite which year. Phenomenal professional career. She's currently on the board of Madonna Tower. She's been on the Federal Reserve Board of the state of Minnesota, dietitian by profession, and then in hospital administration. And she tells the story when she was a novice. She prayed that the last thing in the world she'd be assigned was to the hospital. I mean, she's just she's an icon, really, and what she's done in this city, not just, it's the broader sense of that, the scope of that, than just in the hospital, but a phenomenal administrator.
And in her 90s now?
95. She just had her 95th birthday Thursday. 95.
And she's in her office daily.
Oh, yeah.
And the office door is never shut.
No, her door is always open, even when she's not right in there. But people stop through, people that remember that, she has a kind of constant flow of visitors that come to see her.
Any other comments? Otherwise, let's thank Sister again for being here.
But I get my story. Warwick. I have a friend.
This is her favorite story.
My friend is Warwick, and I don't have in this collection of slides a picture. Close your eyes and picture this dear old mule standing in a field. His name is Warwick, and it is a wonderful story. It actually comes from the play called "Some Folks Feel the Rain, Others Just Get Wet." A man was lost while driving through the country. As he tried to reach for the map, he accidentally drove off the road into a ditch. Though he wasn't injured, his car was stuck deep in the mud. So the man walked to a nearby farm to ask for help. "Warwick can get your car out of that ditch," said the farmer, pointing to an old mule standing in a field. The man looked at the decrepit old mule, looked at the farmer, who just stood there repeating, "Yep, Warwick can do the job." The man figured he had nothing to lose. The two men on the mule made their way back to the car. The farmer hitched the mule to the car. With a snap of the reins, he shouted, "Pull, Pat! Pull, Jack! Pull, Fred! Pull, Warwick!" And the mule pulled that car right out of the ditch. The man was amazed. He thanked the farmer, patted the mule, and asked, "Why did you call out all of those names before you called out Warwick?" The farmer grinned and said, "Old Warwick is just about blind. As long as he believes he's part of a team, he doesn't mind pulling." Isn't that a great story? And I think, fostering a spirit of teamwork is always critical in times of change. Teamwork will be vital for us if we're to succeed in whatever we're trying to do. As long as we're pulling in the right direction and together, we'll be successful. So again, thank you. I'm delighted, happy to be here with you.
As the farmer said as he fell out of his wagon, it's time to hit the road.